So guys, last week we talked about a lot of things. We had a little bit of a recap, and we started talking a little bit about the snake. And I told you that today's title, which I haven't put up here yet, dating game. Now, I am not quite this old, but looking up, I remember as no one sing it with me. Okay. And I feel like at the end of a date, everybody might go, mwah. Yeah. Did this happen? I think this is what happened. All right.
And I picked number 2.
You picked number 2.
Bachelor number 2.
That's right. So kind of an iconic game show that a lot of people, especially from that era, remember. And so I want to talk a little bit about the idea that for those that don't know that, right? If I told this, if I sang that song, if I hummed that tune, if I did that motion to millennials, they would look at me like I was an idiot and like, what are you doing? It would have no meaning to them, right? Without the context of that show, of having seen that show, if there were two people that were talking to each other, and I saw that I thought they were interested in each other, and they were asking the kind of questions that you would ask to see if someone was a potential match with you. And I saw that happening, and I started singing. They would look at me like, why are you singing that? But if I did that with two people that had seen the show, they would recognize, oh, he's thinking we're asking about being compatible with each other. The context of that makes a difference, right? Knowing the context, would you agree with me? Mm-hmm. Knowing the context makes a difference. Everything. Context changes everything. Okay? So, when we are talking about theology, when we are talking about the study of God, the same is true. Context is everything. We miss so much because we are reading from our context, from our time period, from our culture, from our way of thinking, and we are not reading from their context, from their way of thinking, from their understanding. And so we miss a lot. And sometimes it's not just that we miss, it's that we err, that we get wrong, because we want to read things from our perspective. We want to read them from our viewpoint. We want to read them from our understanding of science. We want to read it from our understanding of how you should write.
And it's understandable. If you have no other alternative.
It is absolutely understandable. If you don't have somebody coming along going, okay, let's just think about what was going on in their time. And when they read this, what are the stories? So in other words, if I said, I'm trying to think of okay, here's a joke. Great joke. It's from a movie. Everything's from a movie for me. It's a wonderful movie. It's called Forget Paris. If you've never seen it, great movie. And there are 3 NBA referees, and they are out eating breakfast. They're reffing a game that night, and they travel together, and they're eating a game. And there's one guy who's reading some sort of tabloid, the Inquirer kind of paper. And apparently this is something he does all the time. And so he says, oh my goodness, look! They dug up, oh, who did they dig up? No, hold on. I mean, it's, wasn't Washington, who was it? My mind is just completely blank. Lincoln. They dug up Lincoln, President Lincoln. And it's just hilarious. They dug up President Lincoln and they shot him with some sort of drug called Revivitol. And apparently he said a few words. And Billy Crystal, who plays the other referee, says, What did he say? How did the play end? Now, if you had no knowledge about the fact that the president was shot during a play, that joke has no meaning. How did the play end? You're like, what's that got to do with anything? Right? But because you know that, because you know the context of what he's talking about, that's funny. Right? It's a funny joke. But when you have to explain, I'm sure some of you have had this experience where you've had to explain your joke because the people didn't get it because they didn't understand the context. Has this happened to you? Yes. And it's not funny to them because they don't understand the context. So, as we come to Scripture, and I know we've said this before, but I think it's another good chance to say it again. If we do not understand the framework of their minds, the way they thought, what they had experienced in their lives, the way they understood their understanding of the world, right? The writers of our Scripture that we're dealing with today, they had different understandings than we do today. We know that the sky is not solid. It's not held up by 4 pillars on the 4 corners of a flat earth. But they thought that. We have to allow them to write from their understanding and not force our scientific understanding or our understanding onto the words. We need to put ourselves in their shoes and say, okay, I'll just accept this is the way they see things. This is the way they saw things. And now I'm going to read it, understanding where they come from. Okay? So one of those context things is some of the things that I gave you here. There was a creation story from a civilization about 1,000 years before Genesis. It's called the Epic of Gilgamesh. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, try to say that 5 times fast, you will see some of the things that they believed. Some of the things from their story of creation. And you'll notice there's a lot of similarities. Now, they're not necessarily exactly the same, but there's some similar ideas and some similar thoughts. Now, does this mean that the writer of Genesis stole from the Epic of Gilgamesh? No, it doesn't mean that. But what it does mean is their ways of thinking, their ways of understanding things that are common to the thought, to the context of the people that were writing Genesis. For instance, the idea that things did just not come to be, that there was a divine or godly power that created. That is a common idea. Now, the way their particular God created is not the same way Genesis portrays our God creating. That's an important difference. Most of the ancient creation accounts, a lot of them anyway, came from violence. There's actually one where the cosmos is created because one God murders another. Our God, our creation account, isn't even close to that. The reason I'm telling you guys this is I want you to realize that there are some things that we're going to talk about today that come out of some of these ideas that their context was. For instance, we're going to talk about the snake today a bit more. So, in ancient understanding, in ancient context, snakes, which is the word in the original Hebrew is not serpent, it is snake. So I'm going to try to make sure I use that word. The snake is not seen as evil. It is not seen as bad. It is seen as an animal that is kind of chaotic. So, chaos is something that resides within creation. It's not something that's necessarily bad. It's not evil, but it absolutely can be not good for you if you go along with it. So, I will give you for instance. So we don't consider Storms, for instance, are chaotic. But we don't look at them and consider them to be evil. But they're chaotic. Do we understand? Okay. So the snake, let's look at the, now that I've kind of talked about it a little bit, let's look at the story for just a minute. So, we are looking at verse 3 in chapter 3. Now the snake was and the word in brackets here is the shrewdest. We did talk last week about these two different words. Arum and it's Arumim. Arumim. Arum and Arumim. So this is plural, this is singular. Arumim is the word for the verse before. The two of them were naked. The word there is Arumim. And now the snake was the shrewdest of all the creatures, and the word there is Arum. So I know we talked last week, I'm pretty sure I said this, that whenever the writers use words that are the same or extremely similar, they're doing this on purpose. They can find other words to use to give us other meanings. And so whenever you see words that are the same, it's trying to point back to the original usage of it and say, this has something to do with that. So we can't just pass by it, even though the translators have translated it differently. We can't pass by the Hebrew words that are similar and just go, oh, well, that doesn't mean anything. In some way, the serpent is similar, or the snake is similar to Adam and Eve. Because they are being described using the same words. So, what I want to talk about right now is I want to talk about the word for Adam and Eve. The word naked. Naked. So, let's talk about this for just a minute. Because I'll tell you what happens a lot when unfortunately, when I hear people teach or preach on this story. This becomes the focal point of what's wrong with the story. Or how this shows they were wrong. This becomes something that is evil. And guys, I just don't think the Scripture bears that out at all. But they grab a hold of this idea and they were naked. They had to cover up. Oh, that was horrible. God had to give them clothes because they were naked. Oh my goodness, they were awful.
Did you say that's Aruman?
Arumim.
I mean, naked.
Naked is Arumim, yes. That word is this word translated. Yes, these two words right here. Those two. Okay? So, is naked a problem? Is it an evil thing? Is it something that's bad?
No, you're born naked.
You're born naked? Well, some people say we're born bad.
Mm-hmm.
Evidently.
Evidently? You think it's, okay?
On my race I did, people were...
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, I did not need that picture for us. Oh, my goodness.
Just had to go there, didn't you?
You would think...
Hold on. I need some white out from my brain right now.
Well,
you would think that if God provided the food for them on the trees, if this was something essential,
yep.
He would provide clothes as well.
Right.
At that time.
So...
And he didn't provide clothes for the animals. They were all naked.
All right, so we kind of have... What are y'all thinking? Are y'all thinking naked's a bad thing, or it's not necessarily a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing.
You think it's a good thing?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends
I didn't
on.
ask that question, but okay.
It depends on what you look. Hey, Terry, it depends on what you look like. Some people it'd be a bad thing.
Terry, it was not a bad thing before
Right.
they made that choice.
Right.
Okay?
And once they make that choice, then all of a sudden, now it's a bad thing, because they're hiding. from
Okay,
God.
now here's an interesting thing. So, it was not a bad thing. So in and of itself, let's just say the concept of being naked, they are naked. God says it's good. Right? God says it's good. So apparently this, in and of itself, is not bad.
And they didn't even realize it until they ate of the tree.
Right.
Now suddenly it's bad.
So let's talk about this word naked for just a little bit. When people are naked, what are some things that come along with that? In other words, so they're naked, they are, what other things come along when you are naked? What other things could we describe someone as if they're naked?
Promiscuous.
Okay, could be, but not necessarily. Give me some other ideas of things that are almost a necessary thing that go along with being naked.
They're exposed.
Exposed. Very good. Exposed. Okay? They're exposed. All right? What else?
They're cooler. A man can get out and mow the yard without a shirt on.
Okay.
Well, I'd get in trouble.
You would today, if you were Eve with the mower, I think you'd probably be okay at that point. But all right, cooler. Anything else?
What about like bashful or kind of shameful?
Well, now here's the interesting thing, because at the beginning of the story, or at the end of chapter 2, look at what it says. It says they were naked, but they felt no shame. So, nakedness does not necessarily come along with the idea of being ashamed.
But it's interesting that for the readers, they throw that in there to make that point, because the initial readers of Genesis would have assumed that.
Well, this is definitely, so this is the narrator. Whoever's telling us this story has injected in that spot to tell you they were naked, but they're not ashamed. Right? So you have this person who's telling the story, giving us this understanding. So they're unashamed. But they are exposed, they're cooler. Is there anything else that goes along with naked that we might be able, maybe maybe playing into this word a little bit.
Vulnerable?
Gold star.
Let's start from
What word?
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable, okay.
Vulnerable. So they were, can we just use that word for right now? They were vulnerable, and yet that wasn't an issue for them.
But they weren't anybody else but them.
Well, there was them, two people, not just one.
Yeah.
They were with the animals.
Yeah.
They were with God. So there are some other beings,
With the serpent.
other things around. The snake is an animal. Again, the animals,
But
God,
they're humans.
another person.
No, they're humans.
Yes, but do you ever feel like you're vulnerable when you're around animals?
Yeah, if it's a bear.
Depending on what it is, right? You feel vulnerable. I saw this video. Someone had dubbed over a moose that was running from a bear, and the moose is running, going, "Hey, you in the car filming? You better get out of here!" And he's running. "I paid you already. I paid you." They're like, "No, you owe me money. Come on, you owe me money." He's chasing the moose. But vulnerability is something that comes along with being naked. They were vulnerable, but it wasn't an issue. They were vulnerable. It wasn't a problem. They weren't ashamed about it. There wasn't an issue with it. They were vulnerable. There wasn't an issue.
But they didn't know they were vulnerable either.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
I think
actually.
well,
It doesn't say they didn't know.
yeah, I think it does, because
Okay.
otherwise Eve would not have been receptive to the serpent or the snake.
Well,
Because she wasn't scared of him, obviously.
but what if the vulnerability, what if the vulnerability that was to be worried about wasn't about the vulnerability?
Well, the serpent wasn't just an animal, it was,
Right.
he was speaking,
Mm-hmm.
so he could communicate with them if they weren't ashamed.
Well, so again, the snake is an animal according to the story. And I'm sorry?
But it talked.
Yes, it did talk. The
It wasn't
Bible
a deer
does,
that talked to him,
I'm sorry?
it wasn't a deer that talked to him.
It wasn't a deer that talked to him. Yes, it was a snake. It was a snake. So, what if their vulnerability wasn't an issue for them, not because they didn't know they were vulnerable, but because at that point, they did not have fear because of another reason. So, I think I mentioned it last week that this happened at a point that we would not have expected. God says it's not first time. The first time God declares something is not good. It's not good for man to be alone. It's not good for the human to be alone. And if you'd asked me a year ago, before I started really getting into this study, I would have said, well, the next thing God does is he creates Eve, splits the human. No, that's not the first thing God does. God creates the animals.
Yeah.
As though one of those might work. You know? The humans, they're okay. Animal number one. Do you have a lot of hair on you? All right, animal number two. Do you walk on 2 legs or 4? Animal number 3. And as though Adam, or the human, is being given this dating game, and he's going through all the animals to decide whether or not he finds one that's compatible with him or not. This very, very bizarre dating game happens within the text. And it's just kind of weird. Why is that the first thing God does? Why doesn't he split the human and have Eve and Adam immediately? Why is it the animals come along first? And Adam goes through and he's looking through, and what does it say? It says in verse, put the human, grown up, reverse, gold, took the human, it is not good for man to be on himself, I'll make a helper suitable for him. And then in verse 19, he shaped from the ground, just like he formed the human. Shaped from the ground every creature of the wild, every bird of heaven, and brought them to the human being to see what he called it. And whatever the human called it, he called his name. The human being gave names to all the animals, and to the birds, and all the creatures. But for a human being, he did not find a helper suitable. He was looking in the animals. He was going through all the animals to find a helper that was suitable, and none were found. That's the dating game. Isn't that bizarre? Why in the world? And could it be that part of our answer to why that happened is the conversation with the snake? So imagine, who do I get to pick on today? Let's see here. Let's go with Ron. Ron. So let's say Ron finds himself, he's been created, he's a snake. All right? And Ron, he's listen to me. He talks. He can be upright. Whether that's with legs or not, I'm not sure, but he can be upright. He doesn't have any hair. He has all these similarities with humans. And the human being has gone through, and hey, it's the dating game, and he's like, well, I've got no hair, I can be upright, I can talk, I'm compatible. Pick me. But no, the human doesn't pick. The serpent, the snake, doesn't pick. And so now it's a little bit later, and Eve and Adam, they have found themselves compatible with each other. They've been told about the tree, and now the serpent's like, I want another chance. Can I have another chance? And he comes and he speaks to Eve. The Hebrew name for Eve is Hava. Havvah. Hava. He comes to Hava, and he does something. I'm going to leave the word vulnerable up here for a minute because it's going to come back up in a second, but I'm going to undo these. Does anybody need a second more to write anything down here before I erase? Nope. Good. All right. So the snake comes to speak to Eve. We've just been told that they're naked or vulnerable, and there's no problem with that. And now the snake comes to speak to Eve, and the snake says, and he is, can we say perhaps, he's the most vulnerable of the beasts of the field, at least at this point. He's the most like them. He would be the most compatible if you had to pick one. And that's why I picked Ron, because Ron's so compatible. He's amazing. All right? So he comes and he speaks, the snake speaks to Eve and says, now let me give you this line from the Hebrew. It's not really a question. I think I said this last week. The line is, even if God said not to eat of any tree, so what? Even if God said not to eat of any tree, so what? Eve interjects. Oh, no, that's not what God said. Well, the serpent didn't say that's what God said. The serpent was making an argument. It doesn't matter what God said. But Eve jumps in and says, oh, that's not what he said. He said not to eat of, he didn't say not to eat of any tree. We can eat of all the trees. We just can't eat of the one in the middle of the garden, which we've already have talked about how there's an issue there. Because that's the tree of life. But let's not get into that right now. We'll stick with the snake. So the snake says, even if God said. Now, if the snake is an animal who is good, who is created to be what he is, could it be that the snake is speaking out of his context? The snake is speaking out of his understanding. He's not speaking in a evil way. He is speaking very truthful from his understanding. So, let me ask you a question. If a lion were a human being, would he be in jail a lot?
Yes.
Why?
Because he kills.
Exactly. He kills other animals, right? But he's not. He's not in jail. Why not?
They didn't have jails then.
Well, today. Why is he not? Why is the lion not in jail today?
Because he eats them.
Well,
They're in the jail, but it's called a zoo.
okay. But what I'm saying is, on the plains in Africa, lions eat other animals. Why are they not in jail for that?
They get killed a lot.
Yeah, usually they kill them if they find them.
Okay.
Because that's what they're supposed to.
That's what they're created to do.
Because they're
Because that's what they're
man-eaters
created
at
to
that
do,
point.
right? It's their instinct. That's been instilled in them by God. That's how He created them. They are made that way, right? They are not on the same level of actions and expectations as humans are, right? Are we? Or rabbits? Okay, thank you. Again, stop it with that white out. Okay, so yes, animals behave in ways that if humans acted in those ways, it would be wrong. Correct? But animals are not under the same rules, the same expectations of living as we are. So for a snake, it would be absolutely expected for a snake to say, okay, Hava, why are you all stressed about this? Why are you worrying about this? You don't need to worry about what God said. You need to worry about what you're feeling, what you're wanting, because God put that instinct in you. Because that's what's true for me. I just do whatever I feel. I do whatever instinct comes to me. That's what I do. I don't have to worry about what God said. I worry about the number one important thing, how I'm feeling. What my instincts tell me to do. So what? So the question becomes, even if God said, don't eat of any tree whatsoever, so what? Do what you're feeling. Do what invites, what's attracting you. Do that. That's the right thing to do. From my context, from my perspective, the way I was created. Bless you. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? I'm seeing some squinched eyebrows here. Some confusion maybe. Questions about that?
That proves their humanity, because she said, what do you mean I don't know? He said, God, said the serpent asked her, God don't want you to know. He said, what do you mean don't want me to know? That's the response.
Right. Well, the idea is that you just do what feels right. Boy, isn't that a big part of issues with our world right now? Just do whatever feels good. That's okay. So guys, could it be that, coming back to the dating game, that God does this so that they will understand that animals and the way they do things are not compatible with what God created them for? God created them to be in relationship with Him, to trust Him, and to listen to His voice, listen to His words. The animals were not created that way. They do whatever comes to them naturally, whatever their instincts are, whatever they look and okay, I'm not married to this person, but I want to do things with this person or this animal. I'm not faithful to one person. I don't have to be, because that's not what I am designed to do. And so the idea that they are not compatible with the animals in any way. But the serpent comes along and speaks from his perspective, from a snake, an animal's perspective, and says, so what if God said this? Just do. If that's what you desire, just do it. Now, let's come back to the vulnerability thing. Earlier, I don't know, how long did we start this? It's been at least a month or so.
6 months, I think.
It has been 6 months. I had you guys circle some words. Let's go through. I want you to realize how many times this happens. Verse 4, when Yahweh God made the heavens and the earth. Verse 5, because Yahweh God had not made it rain yet. Verse 7, Yahweh God shaped the human person. Verse 8, Yahweh God planted a garden. And then keep going down. Verse 15, Yahweh God took a human being. 18, Yahweh God said. 19, Yahweh God. And you keep going down. 21, Yahweh God. And you keep going down to 22, Yahweh God. And now you come to verse 3. And all the creatures of the wild that Yahweh God has made. And the snake says to Eve, what name does the snake use? Is it the same as all the previous ones? Come on, somebody.
In English is God.
Verse 3,
It just says dear God.
it just says God. So guys, here are the differences between those. The first one is Yahweh God, or Yahweh Elohim. When the serpent speaks, it's just Elohim. Elohim is the word that is used for God when we're talking about God and His power. God, the God that does things. The God is simply about power. Yahweh Elohim is God is relationship. God is love. The power flows out and is controlled by this understanding. Okay? So the first, yes,
Yahweh God don't appear in chapter 1.
exactly. Chapter 1, God is doing things. There is no real understanding in the first chapter of relationship yet. It is simply the God of power, the God that does things. That is the word that is used in, that is the name that is used in chapter 1. Starting in chapter 2, verse 4, and all the way through Adam and Eve's story, it is Yahweh Elohim, because now we are talking about relationship. We are talking about a God who is doing things for them out of love. A God who creates the fruit trees out of love for them, out of relationship for them. Everything God does is out of love and relationship. Okay? And then all of a sudden, the snake speaks. Did the God of power alone? Did he? Even if he said this. So here's the interesting thing. If all you have is a God of power, if that's all God is, if he's simply a God who's about power, then can you trust in that God?
There's no relationship.
There's no relationship. Why would that God of power do anything for you? Why would his concern be about you at all? If he's simply about power, then there's nothing about relationship and love. Now, prior to this, we're told this over and over again. The God of relationship and love, who was also powerful. But for the snake, for the animals, it is what God put in them just to act naturally. There's no need necessarily of love and relationship for them. They just do what they do. But for us, it's vital. It's vital that we understand this. Guys, so much of Christianity today is completely about that.
So, dogs.
Okay,
Because they love.
dogs. Those naked dogs.
They're animals, but they love.
They are.
Yeah, they do.
They are. But my question is, I'm not saying necessarily that, but the idea that do they instinctually know right and wrong? Do they instinctually know, okay, that's not something I should do, that's something I shouldn't do? They are more loving, I will grant you that, absolutely. But when it comes to the idea of, oh, I'm married to this dog, I can't go have puppies with that dog. That's not really something that they instinctually do. It's quite the opposite, really. Okay?
But if they're in a pack, there are orders and rules.
Yes, but again, it's instinctual, right? It's an instinctual kind of thing.
Alpha, male, and
Yeah,
female will
absolutely. Yes, for sure, for sure.
But there's no mercy and grace with any of that.
No. It's, in fact, I think we say dog eat dog world. Don't we? We talk about things like that, yeah.
I always found it interesting that when the snake is talking to Eve about you're going to be like a god, that power is just knowing good from evil, which like to us that's not a big deal to be God, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to figure out the point of that.
I think there's a way more to that than what we're getting from a surface level reading.
Right.
So we'll get back to that. Let me try and talk a little bit more about this because I've only got 7 minutes here. So if I am vulnerable, but I am certain that there is a God who absolutely loves me, who absolutely, that is his first priority over everything else, and that he has the power to do that, and that his power flows out of this, then do I have to worry about the fact that I'm vulnerable? No. God was providing everything they needed. There was an abundance of anything that they needed. The garden is described as this abundance. But the question of their vulnerability comes into play when the question of whether God is this or whether God is this. Because if this is who he truly is, then now this becomes a big deal. And so if God is the God that is like the snake understands, he's simply a God of power, that's really all we need. That's really all we need to know and understand. Just do what it feels like. Do what comes naturally to you. There's no other worry because he is the God of power. He put that into you. You don't need to worry about anything else. Notice what Eve says. Notice the name she uses. She mimics the serpent. She mimics the snake. She says, no, Yahweh said we may eat of any fruit.
Oh, she said.
You find it here. Well, it doesn't have actually. Yeah, in the garden it says, but from the tree that's in the middle of the garden, God said. She says Elohim, not Yahweh. She mimics the name. So she is already starting to think about it from that perspective, from the snake's perspective. So she's already beginning to see things from a different perspective than she's seen before. And then I know we talked about this last week, she inverts the view of the tree. Before, it was good to look at and desirable for food, but now it gets reversed when she talks about it. She sees, when she says she looks at it, she sees it and sees it as, first off, about eating it. Looking at it is second. So, if God is not the God who is love, who is relationship, where vulnerability is not a major concern for us, isn't a big concern for us because we know who God is and we're not afraid because we're vulnerable. But now when God is the God that's just power, he's not necessarily looking out for us. He's not necessarily the one that's going to take care of us. Now I've got to worry about taking care of myself. Now I've got to worry about getting for myself. God is supplying all things for us up here, but wait, maybe he's not. Maybe he's trying to keep something from me. Maybe he's not trustworthy. I'm going to have to do it on my own. I'm going to have to get for myself. And if I'm going to have to do it for myself, then I sure want to have the advantages God has. And so if I not only can get for myself, but I also get. When there is a voice that's to you, can God really be trusted? Does he really love you? Or is he just trying to keep you from doing things that would be good for you to do? Because I'll say so much of Christianity is about God is just a big joy killer. We have an issue?
That says audio disruption. Audio isn't broadcasting.
Okay.
Finish the live stream and start again.
I wonder how long that's been there.
I don't know, I've been listening to you instead of watching that.
Don't worry about it. We'll get
Good
it a second.
answer.
We'll get it a second.
It sounded good at your time, didn't it?
Yeah.
See, I listened to her.
So, this is what happens to us all. Yes.
So it's down to choices, is that what you're saying?
It is down to trust. It all comes back to trust. Do we believe and act and make choices based on the idea that we can trust God or that we can't? And that is the voice that speaks to everybody at one point or another, and then probably multiple times after that. And Adam and Eve, they've got to realize that just because this is normal for the snake, just because this is normal for the animal, doesn't mean it's normal for them. And they have been tempted to think like animals. Could it even be that perhaps the skins that God gave them pointed to the idea that the issue was that they had been thinking like animals?
I didn't hear that.
I said, could it be that the skins that God gave them to wear pointed to the fact that the reason they were leaving is because they had been thinking like animals?
Well, it's getting to be fall and the leaves are gonna fall.
I'm sorry?
It's coming close to fall, so the leaves might fall off.
They weren't running races.
It just keeps coming back to naked.
I just live with an R-rated class. So I have to put a warning here.
Well, guys, I'm going to leave it there. If questions come up over the week, please write them down. Send me an email, send me a text. I would love to get questions, but I think we're going to stop right there. Guys, it's very easy, if you think about it, for us to start thinking instinctually, start thinking like animals, start thinking that we've got to do it for ourselves. We've got to produce for ourselves. We have to be our own source of things. And what does it matter what God said?
That's a good point.
Because He's just not trustworthy all the time. And that's our struggle. Our struggle is to realize all the time, every moment, He is good and He is trustworthy. And the reason we know that is because we have seen Jesus. Father, thank you for who you are. Thank you. We know that because of your Son. As we step into the main service today, I ask that you would help us to walk in under that, walking in that air of breathing in the Word, Jesus. That we are breathing Him in and breathing Him out. And every time we sing, every time we speak, it is His breath. It is Him that is coming out and infecting other people. And that they'll catch Him. And for being able to be a part of that ministry, what Paul says, the ministry of reconciliation, that we get to be a part. We praise you for that joy. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.